Hey everybody, Chris here, and I'm bringing you my review of Megalopolis, the Francis Ford Coppola film that was 40 years in the making. So for a little bit of backstory here, I attempted to see Megalopolis in a theater, got my ticket on the Regal app. It actually selected a different theater somehow. That was probably human error, so I didn't get to see it. I saw Joker 2 instead, which, comparing the two, I'm not sure what the better experience might have been here. So I didn't see it in theaters. I really did want to check it out though. And so I waited for it to be available on streaming, and I just saw the other night that it was reduced to $10 to rent. So much more than I would want to pay for it. I was kind of hoping it would be available on a streaming app. It was not, so I had to sort of bite the bullet and pay for it because I do feel like it's worth supporting an artist when they have sort of an unfiltered vision that they're willing to throw their own money behind. And if you don't have the backstory here, Coppola spent $120 million of his own money. He sold part of his wine estate, apparently, to fund this thing. And I think it's rare that we get that sort of experience in modern filmmaking. So I was willing to shell out the money to rent it because I think it's important to contribute that. So I guess technically twice I did that because I bought the ticket to see it in a theater and then had to see something else. The theater manager at the theater I thought I was seeing it at was super gracious and let me see Joker 2 for the cost of what I had paid for Megalopolis without buying a new ticket. But that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about the movie itself. So what is this movie actually about? That's a really good question. It's set in a futuristic version of New York City called New Rome, where an architect named Caesar Catalina, who is this visionary genius that is sort of polarizing in that society, wants to create a utopia. So in that utopia, he wants to have things like a garden for every adult. There needs to be magic sidewalks, which we get in the movie, that sort of skirt people along like sort of glimmering escalators. He's got this vision. He wants to have it happen because the New York of this alternate America is sort of, or the New Rome, I should say, is sort of crumbling. There are class wars. There's all kinds of crazy stuff going on. There's a lot of modern commentary woven into this, but that's sort of the idea that Adam Driver's character has in mind. So we learn early in the movie that Caesar Catalina, again, Adam Driver, has created this material that earns him a Nobel Prize. It's sort of this substance that I guess can be rearranged at the cellular level, and it has applications in medicine, all kinds of different fields, but most notably for the purposes of the narrative we get here, architecture, right? You can build things out of it, rearrange it, and it apparently is borderline miraculous in what it's able to accomplish. So beyond Adam Driver, we really do have a great cast here. Giancarlo Esposito plays a mayor who is kind of stuck in the past. There's sort of this long brewing conflict between him and Adam Driver's character. Aubrey Plaza is in this movie as a character named Wow Platinum. And that name is every bit as stupid as it sounds. And the character is every bit as stupid as you would imagine given the name. And so I think that character actually is one of the movie's greatest weaknesses. I mean, I get why she's there, but every time she's on screen, and this doesn't have anything to do with Aubrey Plaza specifically, but the character, the way she's written, is just hysterically bad. Like, I don't think it was supposed to be funny on purpose, but every time she says something or does something, it's just so cartoonishly over the top and dumb that I couldn't help but laugh at it. And I don't think that's what Coppola was going for. Jon Voight is also in this film as Crassus, who is a bank tycoon, and every character is sort of vying in some way to be aligned with Crassus to get money for their different ambitions. Shia LaBeouf also shows up in this as a ponytail-clad, spoiled grandkid who wants to have notoriety and fame and his own place in the world. His character is really obnoxious and stupid, which I guess is supposed to be the point. I mean, the whole thing here to me is that it's supposed to have Shakespearean undertones, but I think it actually more frequently veers into kind of soap opera territory. And the dialogue is so stilted and dumb that, again, I found myself frequently laughing at the movie instead of with the movie, which is a major issue. I think my other problem with this film is that it just looks really cheap, right? I mean, you would think for $120 million, there's a lot you can do with that. I'm sure the vast majority of that funding went toward getting these actors on board with it, but the look of the picture feels kind of unrefined. It almost looks like something you would get from an unfinished Sci-Fi Channel movie, which is not great, especially from, again, a director like Francis Ford Coppola. We're talking about The Godfather, Apocalypse Now. I mean, just really world-class masterpieces. And to get this thing, I don't know, it feels kind of rushed. It feels, again, super unpolished. And in that sense, it really took me out of the whole experience. In fact, the title Megalopolis, the actual sort of futuristic city that's springing up in the wake of or the ruins of New Rome, this fictionalized New York, it looks like something you would get from a Star Wars fan film. Like, it looks like, you know, if I took some kind of VFX program and I'm like, I'm going to try to make a fan film about Naboo and about the Gungans and the first underwater empire. Like, it looks like that sort of thing. I kind of get the organic nature of what Coppola and his effects team were probably going for, but I just did not buy into it. Again, I get the vision that they have sort of in mind here, but it just doesn't look like something you would get from a major motion picture, again, especially from a director of the caliber of Francis Ford Coppola. Okay, so I've done a lot of bashing of the movie, and I think rightfully so. If you've seen it, you might disagree with some of this, but I think these are warranted complaints. But I will give it credit for sheer ambition. I think that that's something that you don't get a lot of in modern Hollywood, and that's why I wanted to support this movie. I think it's doing some things that I understand why a major studio would not want to support this and put it out there, because, you know, had it had the backing to be a $250 million movie, for example, it would have flopped even harder, probably. So I think this only could have happened in the way that it did, right? In the way of Coppola sort of self-financing this to make it become a reality. I'll also give this credit because even though I think from a narrative perspective, a storytelling perspective, it's kind of bankrupt. It's very thinly sketched and loosely organized and borderline kind of psychedelic in the way that it approaches things. I do think there are some interesting questions sort of woven into this. And I think, again, this is the only way that this type of movie could have happened. So they're asking a lot of questions here about what it means to be human. I think that Coppola is trying to redirect the lens, so to speak, onto the audience and say, you know, what are you going to put up with in terms of our modern day caste system in the United States? What are we willing to deal with? Where do we, you know, draw a line and make an effort to support our fellow human beings? I think that's one of the bigger questions being asked here. And I think the fact that Coppola intersperses those questions with real world events. So there's some kind of jump cut editing in this where you've got images of the aftermath of the World Trade Center collapses, you know, 9/11. You've got World War II, Adolf Hitler imagery sort of woven into this. It's very clear sort of what the goal was in terms of what Coppola wants the audience to ask questions about. But because it's so narratively scattershot, and I almost hesitate to use that word. I mean, there is a narrative here. And I think in Coppola's mind, it probably felt like this grand, again, kind of Shakespearean thing, but that's not what it is at all. It's very soap opera level kind of stuff. And it barely holds itself together. And it's just bizarre. It's just a bizarre experience. I appreciate the movie for what it is, but I think the most frustrating thing too is that I think there really is clearly a much better movie under the surface here. Coppola just could not find a way to sort of get it out of the muck, to get it to the surface. So it just never fully comes to fruition. What we get is something that is kind of a weird acid trip type of movie kind of experience is the best way that I could think to describe it, especially in a lot of the kind of club scenes, the celebration scenes, that kind of stuff. It almost feels like having an editor who would be on board. And I feel like the best filmmakers do this. Having editors that are there to kind of rein in some of the worst instincts of a director. Or if they're watching a movie in the editing process or watching what the product looks like and thinking, this doesn't make a lot of sense. We need to find some way to kind of discuss this and hash it out. I feel like that could have been helpful here. What this ends up being really is just kind of a murky, bizarre, hot mess of a movie with some great philosophical nuggets. And again, I do appreciate the ambition of it, but it just doesn't work as a film, and I really can't recommend it. Unless you're just a cinephile and you want to see what Coppola is doing, what this sort of mystery project ended up being after 40 years of gestation. You know, in that sense, maybe it's worth watching, but definitely don't pay to rent this. Just wait until it's streaming somewhere for free as part of a service you're already paying for maybe, and then dive into it. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Megalopolis. If you've seen the movie, let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, thanks so much for watching.